Hey, Monday. Yeah, I actually kind of feel normal today. It's Monday morning. No, it's Monday afternoon. It's noontime. Business pants. We're Free Float Media. That is Matt Moscardi somewhere over there
I
in
am. I'm
southern
right here. I'm right. I'm with you. I'm with you.
southern New England. I am Damian Rollis up here in northern New England. We are business pants. This is fact-based snark making the business news less sucky, talking about things like stakeholders and
Can I
uh,
can I just say
diversity.
we're gonna fail
Uh,
at our mission today? The business
okay.
news is sucky today. It's just
No, no, that's not true. Sucking. Well, okay, you're using sucking a different way. You're saying that it. We're saying it like in a. We're trying to make this less stuff sure, like less.
oh.
Like you're speaking to an insular Princeton. I almost swore, but I'm not going to swear.
Did you say insular?
Insular. What
There,
did I
there,
say?
you
Did I
will
say
learn if you're watching in Korea, and we know you
yeah,
are live.
better.
Then we're going to also apparently learn to speak English on this show. What do we got
Well,
on tap today? This feels like a lot of stuff over the
you
weekend.
know, I took a different tack today. Usually I script some more stuff out and I'm very careful with my outlining. But today I'm just going to do a big, weird, blobulous show about paranoia. And we're going to focus on the top, of course, on coronavirus. But then we're going to end by we're going to just kind of jump around the world of big data and just talk about some new and fun stories that are going to make you paranoid.
You say fun, I say terrifying. All right,
Yeah.
what do we got?
Uh,
Do you want a harp? I feel like I missed the
yeah.
harp.
Something, anything.
I want the harp. That's not the
Oh, that
harp.
harp. Yeah, I like that harp.
No,
Oh,
I like this harp. That's what's going on. I'm getting
can we
lots of
do
different
both?
things. I got audio problems. All right, let's just do
All right.
no audio.
Um,
Hit me with your first story,
all
which
right. Let's just at the top of the show today, in honor of coronavirus. Does anyone really need to honor it? We do. In honor of coronavirus and Oscar-winning film Parasite out of South Korea. They don't call it South Korea anymore, but I do. Um, we're just gonna jump around that world for a bit. First, I'm just gonna quickly go over some coronavirus headlines, and we don't have to talk about them, but I just want to throw them out there. Factories in China remain shuttered as some regions extend shutdowns. China rejects Foxconn's request to resume production in key plant.
hmm,
Uh, this week in business, coronavirus could complicate everything. Hundreds of Chinese firms seek billions in loans. What else? China struggles to get back to business, obviously, and then the coronavirus fallout is battering African economies. So yeah, that's coronavirus, and at the same time, um, let's call it an ESG movie, a movie about income equality from Asia called Parasite, of all things. Can you believe it?
I can.
Won the Oscar last night. Already in the U.S., the right wing is pissed off, because they, meaning non-white men named John, are coming for them. No offense, John Walsh, our artist in residence. Uh, so it's got me thinking about the bigger picture here about parasites, about income equality. We're talking about globalization. We're talking about how China, of all countries, is handling the coronavirus outbreak and what that means. And we had some fascinating pre-production conversations with our very own expert Matt Moscardi. So let's can we recapture some of that conversational glory, Matt, and talk about this?
Well, I don't. So, I think that
That's your way of saying no.
that's uh, I I I think so. From a
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
like, look, the dominant narrative of coronavirus in the business news. If you're like an investor, what you're focused on is effectively supply chain, right?
yeah.
And we talked
So
here about coronavirus is humanizing the supply chain in ways that, I mean, I guess few other things do. I mean, you would have outcry in the past about um, uh, supply chain, child labor in the supply chain, for instance, in definitely in like fashion, where there's brand consciousness. You would get a humanizing the supply chain when Foxconn had their rash of suicides. But it seems to take like a massive, potentially global viral pandemic for people to say, oh, there's people in the supply chain, which is
Yeah, yeah.
interesting. And you're comparing it to the income inequality issue and sort of like the zeitgeist around, a movie like Parasite, which now wins an Oscar.
Yeah. I mean, here's where my paranoia took me this morning, and why the show is about paranoia is that it just got me thinking that who, which countries are most at risk for a pandemic like this are, of course, the poorer countries, and frankly, the countries that we rely here in the West to make all of our boring widgets that we buy, our supply chains, and it just kind of got me pissed off a little bit. And no, and really, and that's
Do
sort
you
of
need a
a
hug?
bit. That's a bit of the tone of Parasite. And we've been talking a lot in the last few weeks about stakeholder capitalism, and income equality, and supply chains are certainly a part of this business roundtable, whether you like it or not. So let's talk about supply chains, Matt. I mean, you made this. You called it an outcry, like at the conditions at Foxconn and child labor. But really, do people in the West? We're not really even remotely close to giving a shit about supply chains, are we? Do you really feel that? I'm sorry, I don't buy that. And I worked at a
Well,
company, MSCI, with very good people, not all Westerners, and I know in their hearts that we as a collective in ESG research do sort of theoretically care about supply chains, but I just I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're at the point in our current history where it's meaningful to us.
no, well, I think look, capitalism. I mean, I don't want to get super philosophical, but I do.
Well,
But we,
too late. I
but
already took you there. Well,
but
paranoia. That's the thing. Paranoia is kind of philosophical, so get a little bit philosophical.
it is. But there's a sort of a practical cultural arbitrage that's happened. And this is what we were talking about in the pre-production meeting. I think the outcry is about like. It isn't about, I mean, there is an outcry when we find out that your shoes were made with child labor. And the outcry is often a stakeholder outcry about, like, this isn't cool, and forcing whatever brand it is to change their supply chain or their policies, or at least address
Kind
the
of, yeah.
issue in some way, right? Like, even if they
Forcing them to change in
greenwash
the
the
sense,
issue.
yeah, forcing them to change in the sense of like getting a press release.
But what's
Like,
interesting about coronavirus is you can't greenwash the issue away. You can't press release this away.
well, of all countries that could try, it would be China, and we're talking about this too. Like, of all countries for this to start, China is such a fascinating and kind of scary case because they are so. First of all, they're engaged in just a ridiculous trade war with us and the West in general, so that's already a bad start. But secondly, they just the way that they control information is just so completely different than we're used to here in the West.
Well, I want to. I mean, there's two distinctions that I think that
Yeah.
you're drawing in the original sort of setup, which
Yeah.
are there's a consumer part of this equation and there's an investor part of this equation. The consumer part of this equation, I think, is what you're talking about. Like the outcry around child labor is likely to come from the consumer. Who doesn't want to buy shoes made by children, but mostly the consumer still wants to get your shit now fast. You still want the iPhone, whatever the latest model is. You still want this
Yeah,
stuff,
supposedly. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So it's
Um,
debatable, but yeah. 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 Keep going.
and well, I mean, like if earnings calls are anything or any indication, people are still buying a tremendous amount of stuff. Like my wife
Oh,
was
yeah.
just listening to
Without a doubt.
20-year-olds go finance Pelotons. Where do you think those bikes are built? They're built in China, right? Like they're
I'm
not
going to
built.
say Rhode Island.
They're not all going to be built here. The parts are built
Uh-huh.
all over the world,
Sure, of course.
often in countries like China. And then there's an investor angle, which is how much disruption, how much reliance is there on places like China? And this is what I'm talking about with cultural arbitrage, right? Like investors for a long time have not had to pay attention to supply chains because the collective culture of China, which is the state above the individual, sort of insulates you as an investor from mass supply chain disruption. Because if you get angry, right, the
Yeah.
state can control the information. The companies are often state controlled in and of themselves. There are
Yeah.
socio-political motivations, but for the most part, the collectiveness of the culture sort of insulates a company, the individual company, from a mass supply chain disruption.
Yeah,
And
and it also protects safeguards our outrage too, right? Because their social media is controlled, and you're right, because they have this sort of collective spirit that we certainly don't have in the West. It has yet to rise to that level of outrage that we feel here.
well, the trade-off in the West, the outrage that we feel here, is with individuals who have amassed too much power and
Mhm.
spur populism. Your Mark Zuckerbergs, your
Right.
OK billionaires, like so
Yeah.
that class effectively can culturally arbitrage as an investment thesis, building a widget somewhere else with people that most of the West don't really think about, and
Hmm.
amass wealth in doing so, knowing that the hedge is, if it doesn't work for one group of people, we are sort of like the collective culture in a place like China means that they will do all in their power to make sure the individual there doesn't matter. They'll do it in their power to get us our widget, because
So
that's the power
yeah,
struggle. But coronavirus is a disruptor of that
right. I was gonna
construct.
say, so we at the tipping point of noticing? Like, are we actually gonna start to notice now?
I don't know that we start to notice more now, but we did analysis on this show, or
Hmm.
on one of our shows, Market Medium. I think
Yeah.
we could have
Oh, we
done
have
it
two
there too. We
shows.
have two
Very impressive.
shows, yeah,
Yeah.
Business Pants and the Market Medium. So if you're missing something, go see the other one.
Already more than our former department at MSCI. Impressive out of two people.
But we did this analysis about how
Yeah.
you kick the infectious can down the road to a place like Vietnam, where infectious disease is actually more prevalent, and they were the big winner in the trade war, and supply chains have moved there,
Cool.
as a result of sort of the trade war dynamics. Everyone's
Right.
like, well, find another culture that we can effectively culturally
And that's
arbitrage our
probably
way to
what we're
widgets.
faced. And that's probably what we're faced with now is that for many decades ahead, the supply chain will probably get kicked around Asia. Will eventually end up in Africa. So it's like it's still going to be removed from us for a while, right? Until we sort of exhaust all of the corners.
Which brings it back to you mentioned the business roundtable and sort of stakeholder capitalism, right?
Mhm.
I think coronavirus is less about public awareness of the humans that are a part of the supply chain, though I think that's part of it. I
Mhm.
think actually what's more likely to me is, particularly in a subset of investors that care about stakeholder capitalism, but even beyond, there's going to be
Yeah.
a broader understanding of the stakeholders involved in sort of the capital chain. And I actually think this is
What
kind
do you
of
mean? I
like
don't,
it's the it's the
yeah, explain more.
well, I think it's the dawning of awareness of what the Business Roundtable and Larry Fink and
Yeah.
like this whole conversation about investing, or doing things for the greater stakeholder group, not just the shareholder. I actually
Okay.
think this is the tipping point in beginning to test that theory, right? Like,
Well,
how
maybe.
does
Yeah.
Apple
Yeah. Yeah.
respond
Right. Right.
to coronavirus? It
Yeah.
says this could impact our earnings, but immediately demands that Foxconn manufacture their own face masks so they could keep making you iPhones.
Yeah.
What is the stakeholder? Is that for the benefit of a stakeholder over
Of
another
course not.
stakeholder? It
Yeah.
sounds a lot to me like that's a shareholder benefit with no human being benefit, right?
Well, yeah, but just because Business Roundtable announces something doesn't mean it has any effect in the real world. I mean,
But that, I
right?
think, is
Which
the
we,
point. When
yeah,
now you get to see sort of the machinations of that announcement to reality, right? Like, is that announcement going to be something that gets lived by? Because it got a lot of play and a lot of press. Like it was on
Yeah.
CNBC, it was on MSNBC, it was on
Certainly not
every
mainstream
channel.
press, but yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah,
it was on
yeah.
every mainstream channel. I saw
Okay, all
debates
right.
about it. Like they were talking about like what is the role. Like it spurred this conversation about what is the role of a company, and you had these ardent sort of Milton
Right.
Friedmanites coming
So then
out
where does it?
saying
Where's
profit.
the conversation go? I don't know where. I mean, so you're thinking maybe a pandemic of this proportion could test that.
I think it's
That
testing it right now. I think it's testing it right now. And I think you're seeing winners and losers of sort of stakeholder capitalism begin to separate themselves, right? Like Apple does not look like a winner in stakeholder capitalism if they're telling the people at Foxconn, just make your own masks and get back to work. Right, and it takes the
but
Chinese government to say,
we already knew
"Whoa,
this about
stop."
Apple, though. But here's the thing: is that we already knew this about Apple. Like we already knew this about Foxconn. We already knew it was an
But
uncomfortable
we look
thing
at
going
someone
on.
like Mark Zuckerberg, and we're perfectly happy and willing to say, well, that guy is a power hungry, maniacal person. But we look at Tim Cook and we say he's the adult in the room. I think
Yeah,
there are
oh,
these
yeah, yeah,
popular narratives about like some of these like these are still profit seeking companies
yeah.
with immense short term pressure who don't think long term, period. And
Yeah.
stakeholder capitalism is a long game. It is not a short game. You don't
No.
play coronavirus like get back to work today. You play coronavirus like we can't have coronavirus happen again. How do we help the
Yeah.
factories, the supply chain, even the countries and the governments
Well,
learn how
that's
to
and that's where
contain and information share and build infrastructure and community so it doesn't happen this way again?
we get back to income inequality because of course which countries are the most ill-equipped to deal with it. It's the losers on this on the income part, right? And if this pandemic does get a greater hold, and some of these countries are going to have, they're not going to be able to handle it clearly, and eventually it's going to creep into the West, and this is when we're going to start to feel the effects of this, right? Like this is why I attach it to income equality, because this is sort of like the dirty aftermath of treating the rest of the world like your supply chain, right? I mean, this is sort of
This is the
right.
walk of shame for
Well, it could be. I mean, this is my
corporates and their
again.
supply chains.
This is my paranoia talking to me, but it just could be. I don't know. Like it's a symbol of it that yeah, sure, we can control it here, but if they can't control it in like 100 other sovereign nations, what is it going to matter? I mean, but that's why I make that connection with income inequality. And you're right. It is all sort of part of supposed mandate out of the business roundtable that we're supposed to care about all these issues. So we're caring about them
So
right
watch us
here.
care. Let's speaking of paranoia.
All right, so let's stay in paranoia and let's just move it over to big data. There are sort of three big stories that emerged either this morning or over the weekend, and in no real. I'm not going to state them in any real importance of order here, but um, first of all, Facebook's Twitter account was hacked by a Saudi hacker group called Our Mine. Okay, that's your first story. All right, and these are all you're gonna notice that all these things kind of connect back to stories that we've talked about here in the past. So the Saudis hacking Facebook's Twitter account. That's the first one. The second one is the U.S. has charged 4 Chinese military hackers, again hackers, um, with hacking Equifax, the credit firm. So there's another nice sort of combination there: China and Equifax. And then finally, there's some fascinating reporting out of the New York Times about a facial recognition a company, a private company called Clearview, that has essentially grabbed all of the photos in the world across the internet and created this very impressive, precise facial recognition software that is so far being used mostly by the police, and that they think has venture capitaling from Peter Thiel of Google. So yeah, if I'm going to recommend a podcast, which I don't usually, I would say check out the Daily's podcast today about Clearview and facial recognition, because it's fascinating. So those are our three big data paranoia pain points. You want to start with any one of them?
Actually, they all. I mean, at a semi macro level, they all have kind of one thing in common, which is
Which is
the the aggressor party. Uh, I don't.
yeah.
Apparently, English is not working for me today.
No, it's fine.
Um, you have Saudi Arabia, you have China,
China,
and you have Peter
Peter
Thiel,
Thiel. Yeah, yeah.
but they all are very victimy. Like they're like so
Okay.
China has effectively been a victim of the West forever. Saudi Arabia is sort of like they just hacked Bezos's phone too. Like
Right, right.
there is like this weird like they are they are paying attention to tech and getting at it for reasons
Uh-huh.
that are not yet clear. And Peter Thiel is the one who waged a war against Gawker, and he is notorious for being kind of like a highly conservative voices get killed in social media. He's on
Right.
Facebook's board, and
Yeah. I was gonna
and
say there's a Trump connection to two of those
there's a,
stories because
there is this
Trump's
Trump connection, and there's
Trump's big growing relationship with the Saudis and with Peter Thiel and Facebook.
they all kind of are like the victims of some sort of they all are or act like aggrieved parties.
Yeah.
Even whether or not they are is I'm not I have no idea, but they all kind of like are motivated by some aggrievement, and they're all targeting the same thing, which is
Okay.
like the amassing of data about
Yes.
you.
Yes. Okay. Let me bring it back to. I'm gonna just throw out a quote from Ali G or Borat or whoever. This is Sacha Baron Cohen, a recent quote. We don't let one person control the water for 2.5 billion people. We don't let one person control electricity for 2.5 billion people. Why do we let one man control the information seen by 2.5 billion people? So that's the other thing all these stories have in common is that uh, more and more uh, these things, and we should define things after I say this, but these things are controlled by a single people, like it's just like individuals, right? I mean, that's one of the scariest things about this Clearview story from the New York Times is that all of this is in the hands of this coder, this one man who promised the New York Times reporter in a very creepy way that he wasn't going to give it to bad agents. Like he said, "I'm not going to give it to Russia or China, so don't worry." But clearly, the takeaway is like, "Holy crap! Like this is just like Zuck."
Like
And
if he
obviously,
decides, it's just going
yes,
to yeah.
right, and then this is what we've come to like now, like here are these two individuals who just kind of coded something quote unquote brilliant, and now they have all this friggin' power. And you're
Like
right, it's all about just sort of, and it's just about the data, about the breadcrumbs that people are leaving behind. It's not like he went out and bought these images. He just cut and pasted them from the internet.
but here's the thing that's that I think is misleading because I think these companies and we should probably end on this point because I think the story will keep going. Um, I think these companies. I know we refer to Facebook as a fake public company all the time because Mark Zuckerberg controls all the vote. It's his company. It's not really a public company where you get to actually
No,
vote on anything.
not even remotely.
But there are other companies, like if you just look at the social media companies, right? Twitter is not a fake public company, but they have, as we established on this show, 50% of their board basically came from Google, and
Right.
the head of the nominating committee is like an ex Googleite collecting his friends.
Mm.
You and we saw this at Boeing. It's the same kind of thing. I know we have like we want to simultaneously deify the founders and have this founder fetish, but also castigate them when they have a lot of power, like Zuckerberg does. But if you get a step above that, outside of the fake public companies, I think this is why having people on your board that are like have a diverse range of stakeholder
Yes,
experiences
yes, thank you.
matters.
Yes, this is what I was gonna say. This is why we beat these drums of
This is why you
diversity.
beat that
It's
drum.
it's not merely like a progressive social campaign, although it is and it can be, but there's more to it than that.
I mean, the guess what here is like, Twitter could share all of the data that they have on people with Russia too, right? But
Mhm.
they have a board, and their board their responsibility is to both protect the company and the shareholder, and now, according to the Business Roundtable, the stakeholder, right? Like, which is you and me and trees and cats and whatever.
Yeah.
And the way that board is composed, it's really scary, and it feels really scary when it's clear view and it's effectively one 26-year-old or 30-year-old dude who's like, nah, I'm not going to sell it to Russia. Don't worry about it. Trust me.
With Peter Thiel as a backer.
With Peter Thiel as a backer, right? But Peter Thiel is on the board of Facebook. Now, do you think that if Mark Zuckerberg's surrounding himself with like-minded friends on his board, do you think there's any room for them to say, don't do that? Don't sell it to Russia. Just like if Clearview has a board and Peter Thiel's sitting on it, like, what do we expect to be the reality of that situation?
And this is why, politics aside, this is not a left or right issue. It's Trump's relationship, growing relationship with people like Thiel and Zuck, and and regimes like Russia and Saudi Arabia. This is the concern, right? I mean, forget
Trump. I feel like if anybody, what Trump is, what the administration recognizes is the power of that relationship, and the fact is, anyone. Like when I have the same reaction when Leon Cooperman comes out as a billionaire. I don't care if he self-defines as a philanthropist, right? But his idea of philanthropy is the one we have to live with because he's the one with the billions who made it on the back of stakeholders throughout a supply chain, right? Like that to me is the fundamental disconnect. When you consolidate the power to make that decision and then you do not give it effective checks and balances with a board that is diverse and thinks, right?
Right. And that's what I'm saying with Trump is, and it's not a left or right thing, is it's about the checks and balances, right? Because the government's role used to be in this type of capitalism is that it represented through regulations, it represented that checks and balance, right? So, but now we're letting tech self-regulate. We've kind of lost that.
So I'll leave you with one stat.
Yes.
As I outro us here.
Yes.
That stat is something I'm working on for future shows. I went and looked at all the boards in the U.S. and tried to figure out which of the board members had experience at the social media companies. And of the IT sector, 30% of board members worked effectively for the same 5 companies at some point in their career. Either they had a board seat there.
30%.
28%, almost 30%. So almost 1 in 3 board members have come from a single viewpoint in IT.
So another subset doing better than women.
And they're all named thanks, John.
Yeah. Good show. We will win. What will we do? We'll look for a release from either Business Pants or
Market Medium will come out tomorrow.
Next few days.
We're going to cover a little bit of ESG news, and we're going to actually do some deeper dive in some of these board issues.
Okay.
But I am Matt Mascardi. That is Damian Rollis. I want to thank our team here, which is the 2 Courtneys who executive produce us and tell us how much we stink. I want to thank John Walsh, who's our art director. I want to thank Dan Rogachnik, who's our senior advisor in charge of smartness. I want to thank Todd Hovanek and the Asset Clowns for writing our genius music. And I want to thank you. Please subscribe and share and love us. You notice we bring this show to you currently ad-free. Not many podcasts do that, nor can they survive to do that for very long. So please make it possible for us to survive by subscribing and telling your friends. And we are Business Pants. We'll be back with you Wednesday. Tomorrow is the Market Medium. Look for that. Thanks, Damian.
Thanks, Matt.